Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Richard Adams and I am a filmmaker and lecturer here at New College Swindon. I'm here today to tell you all about the different kinds of job roles that you'll find in the film industry, what those jobs entail, what are entry-level jobs, what skills and qualifications you might need for those jobs and who you work with and how the different departments intermingle. Today with me I have the second year HND class who are filming this, and each of them as part of their course are taking on a different job role in order to make this video. So let's jump in. I'll start by talking a little bit about myself and how I've sort of come to be here today. I've always been hugely interested in film, reading about film, making films, writing films and directing films, and a lot of people do start with directing their own individual sort of short films, whether at college, university, in their own time, and it can be a great experience, but they tend to be quite smaller, more personal projects, and I think they're quite different to working on a bigger or more industrialized version of film production. So you have to think that even if you have directed your own films, you still may be jumping into the industry in one of the sort of entry-level jobs, and that's fine. That's how it should be, and your experience will help you do that job well and hopefully go in the direction you want. As well as doing short films when I was younger, I did a few web series which were a really popular format around sort of the 2010 era of YouTube, kind of before streaming, but once we were getting a lot of online material. More recently I went on to produce the horror film Clown Face. Being a producer is quite a different skill to being a director, but I think it's a really important one because you really get to know and help sort of hire people into the different departments and roles, and getting that right is so important to making a film shoot run smoothly. More recently, I'm working on directing again and producing an anthology film, which I have actually in fact worked with a number of students on these projects as well, giving them vital experience with industry professionals and working on set. I think perhaps the most famous of the sort of entry-level jobs is production runner. So the production runner or production assistant or gopher is the person who essentially helps make the whole shoot flow, the whole production go smoothly by doing all the odds and ends and little jobs. Carrying messages, escorting people, making the tea and coffee, which is actually really vital. I mean, I'm not even joking. Making sure your crew are fed and watered and got all the drinks they need is absolutely vital. And just keeping everyone happy, keeping things running smoothly, keeping the energy levels up. And it's the production runner's job to do all these things. And to be a production runner, you have to have a very personable way of doing things. You have to get on with people, you have to be quick to do things. Proactive is really important as well, so making sure you're anticipating the needs that people have, always having the kettle on the boil, definitely, but also being able to take people to set, from sets. Having a car is really, really helpful. You don't have to, it's not obligatory, but it really does help if you're going to do the production runner role to have that sort of mobility as well. And production runners as a role is a great way of seeing a lot of the set, because you will be engaging with so many different departments and so many different people, and if you're friendly, get to know them, or make yourself especially helpful, it can be a good way to build those relationships and hopefully go through into the departments you're interested in. For instance, it can be that you become a production runner specifically for a department, say camera department, and from there maybe you start learning a little bit about it, and maybe the third AC role might be something you'd get to try at some point. I mean, and then travel along that pathway to camera operator eventually. So it's a great way of starting out and really seeing how things work and start thinking about what pathway do I want to follow and building the relationships that will help for that. So the camera department is one of the sort of key areas, obviously, of filmmaking. You need to ultimately get the pictures on the screen, and in charge of that, really, at the top of both camera and lighting of the image of the film, you have the DOP, the director of photography. Depending on the size of the production, they may operate their own camera or have a separate camera operator whose main job is to operate the camera. So we have Ihor and Anthony, two of our students here today, doing those roles, operating the cameras for us. And then you have different assistants for the camera operator, again, depending on the size of the production. So first assistant camera can often be known as the focus puller, responsible for, as the name says, adjusting the focus. This can be done manually, or even nowadays you often have a separate device for wirelessly controlling focus on devices. You have your second assistant camera as well, more likely to do your loading the clapper. It can be called the clapper loader. That's making sure they write down the scene, the roll, the take, making sure it's all recorded and all the details are kept track of. And then assisting that and maybe having some other sort of elements, tapes, just doing odds and ends that the camera department needs. If you have a third AC, third assistant camera, they can also, again, depending on the production, essentially be a kind of production runner specifically for the camera department. A lot of these roles, if it's a smaller production, might become amalgamated. If it's a bigger production, it will become increasingly specialised. So it very much depends on the size of the production. You'll also potentially get a camera trainee who kind of mostly shadows the camera operator, and this works as an entry-level job as well. They might look after the lenses, clean things, do all that kind of element. And it's worth mentioning the first AC, as well as focus pulling, may often help rig up the camera, set up the equipment and store and build and work with the camera operator and DP. So there's a lot of different roles, and the reason that there are a lot of different roles, and the reason this is it makes things smoothly, it makes people able to concentrate on one specific job and do that job really well. As well as the camera department controlling like that side of things, the DOP has the real interest in playing with the visual look of the film, the colours on set, the sort of whether there's different types of lighting. The DOP is responsible for creating the visual style that is what the director wants, so they work very closely with the director. The DOP on some smaller shoots might, as I've said already, might operate the camera. They might also do all the lights themselves. They certainly plan all the lighting out, but if it's a bigger production, they can have one. There's the role of the gaffer. The gaffer essentially will set up the equipment, set up everything where the DOP says. They'll make sure the electrics, it's all plugged in, it's all safe and secure. The gaffer can also have a lot of role in like adjusting the lights as well, making sure it's safe and ready to go. And actually having a bit of background in electrical skills can be good for a gaffer. And you know, just making sure that the visual palette of the film and the colours all work nicely. The only other element we might want to mention under the DP and sort of purview is grips. So grips tend to be kind of technical roles, but especially in a big production, you may have very specialised, like you might have a dolly grip whose entire job is getting the dolly set up, making it safe, making it all ready to shoot. A lot of these jobs, gaffer, camera operator, grip, they're all about making life for the DOP very much easier, much more that they can focus on getting the right lighting, making sure the shadows are correct, and that the visual aesthetic is what the director wants, because ultimately the DOP and the director are a team creating the visual style and language of the particular production. So obviously the director is the big role that everyone remembers, and the director is very much at the heart of a production on set. I've just talked about how the DOP and the director work together, and that is a really important relationship. But the director does have other key relationships, and that's really with the other heads of department, the heads of the sound department, who will record the sound, the heads of the makeup department. But a director whilst on set wants to concentrate most of his attention on his cast and filming that cast and being able to work with his cast, block out the scene, making sure everyone knows where they need to be, working on their performances. That's really important. And what helps the director do this is the first AD. So the first AD is almost like a buffer between the director and everyone else. If there is a issue or anyone needs anything, rather than going straight to the director, they can go to the first AD, and hopefully the first AD can resolve that issue. If the first AD is unable to resolve it, they can talk to the director themselves. But that way it just keeps everyone in the department, and the director can mostly focus on, he said, talking to the DOP and the cast, maybe someone from sound, and it makes it a lot easier for them to concentrate on that creative aspect, while all the technical roles that we've already spoken about are all going on around. You also may have a second or even third AD, assistant directors, and their roles again will depend on the size of the production. Second AD more traditionally will be on a production base, so if there's a separate base, doing a lot of the sort of managing and sort of admin elements of directing, whereas a third AD often manages extras, makes sure crowds and people are in the right place at the right time. It's very much a people management role. You also get script supervisors. They sort of become in this area. They don't necessarily talk again to the director straight away, but to the first AD to let them know if they detect any elements in the script that haven't been filmed, maybe between two cuts they've missed a line, or maybe a line of dialogue gets changed in one day's filming and they go back to film the scene from another day and they forget. The script supervisor makes sure everything is recorded and that continuity of the production is maintained, costumes, set, props, dialogue, and that everything that is needed recording is recorded. The director isn't inherently the top of the chain though. There may be a producer. Producers may be not on set, but if they are on set, they obviously have a level of authority, although it does depend, again, on the production. It depends on how famous the director is as well, how much clout they have. Someone like Ridley Scott or James Cameron definitely going to have more ability to be fully in charge. And often work as producers themselves. But a producer or executive producer or assistant producer, they all take on different roles that essentially help manage the project, whether that's financially or organisationally, or just making sure everyone is doing their job in general. So there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of roles in film and television just on that production side of things. And even with that, there's just as much variety of roles when you get to post-production. The bridge between production and post-production is the role of the DIT, or digital imaging technician, who on set is responsible for looking after the footage, to backing up the footage, getting it off the cards, making sure none of it's lost. On bigger productions, the DIT also might check the footage, do a rough grade, make sure any special effects work is able to be done, like even just roughly. just to make sure they've got everything they need for when they move into editing. The editor is another role that works very, very closely with the director, because the director's vision has to come across. Now, the editor may work with a lot, not just the footage, but the storyboards, the shot list. They may use a number of different things to help them sort of put together a assembly cut, just the rough version of the footage all together to get an idea how it looks. They may start fine-tuning that, or might then start getting feedback from the director on what to do. Even the editor is almost the head of a department there. Under the editor, you may have the colorist, who will have the specialist role of doing color grading. A good early entry-level job into editing might be the editor's assistant. Editing assistants can do things simply as organising the footage into folders, making sure bad takes are removed, making sure everything's properly labelled. A lot of the more kind of tedious or perhaps laborious kind of technical things that they have to do, but means the editor can focus on the creative element. But again, it doesn't mean it's a bad role. It doesn't mean it's not a great way to get experience. It absolutely is. You also have any special effects and After Effects kind of elements that might need to be put onto the film. That all comes under post-production editing. And it's all about getting the film to that completed sort of director's cut, the vision of the director. That might not be the end, depending on the production. The producer may request changes, and the producer may have the final say on what the finished project will look like. So that is, again, depending on the production. But once you've gone through editing, once you start getting that material, it's time sort of for the marketing and distribution elements to sort of kick in, and you get into that final stage, which is almost the exhibition and distribution stage, which is where films start getting out there, getting to people, getting advertised, and that moves almost into a different area again from that production process. So film has a huge variety of roles, a huge variety of jobs, many different entryways into the industry, and many different skills, sub-skills, and things that you can do. And the more sort of experience and the more variety of abilities and techniques and skills you have personally, the better it is for you to navigate, negotiate, and ultimately succeed within the industry.